All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're diving into something pretty big, literally. The Pacific Steel Group's Mojave Micro Mill in Kern County, California.
Huge, yeah.
Big news because it's the first new steel mill built in California in, what, over 5 decades? And I know you've been digging into
Looked
this.
a few years, yeah.
So we've got some sources here detailing the history of this project, the potential economic impact, really the impact on California as a whole.
Yeah.
And, I think what's really interesting to me is just how much steel California uses.
Yeah.
I mean, over 1 million tons every year. And to think that we haven't had a new steel mill in, like you said, over 50 years.
Hmm.
I mean, that's a lot of reliance on outside sources.
Yeah. And, it's interesting because when you think about a state like California with the size of its economy, with its infrastructure needs, to be completely reliant on steel coming from outside, not only does that mean transportation costs, but, it's kind of a strategic vulnerability,
Right.
like in our supply chain.
Yeah.
And it's also a loss of potential economic growth and jobs. And this mill is directly aiming to address those concerns.
Yeah, absolutely. So this Mojave Micro Mill, located in Kern County, feels like it's a real turning point for the state. And one thing that immediately jumped out at me was this goal of zero process carbon emissions.
Right. From the get-go.
This is potentially the cleanest steel mill globally.
If it's able to achieve that.
If it achieves that, yeah, which would be amazing.
And of course, there's the economic boost, the jobs coming to Kern County. So let's start maybe with the history. How did this project even come to be? Give us the timeline.
Well, the Pacific Steel Group was actually founded in 2014. And it was in 2020 that they created PSGM3, which is the limited liability company specifically for this project.
Okay.
So they went through the whole CEQA process, the California Environmental Quality Act process.
That's a big hurdle.
Huge. And they that was completed in March of this year. And they are now working on getting the air permit so they can start construction.
No. And they had a groundbreaking ceremony on March 5th, 2025, which Governor Newsom attended. So you can see there's a lot of high-level state support for this.
Absolutely.
Hatch is the project and construction management partner. And the current timeline has them becoming operational in Q1 2027.
Oh, so that's been pushed back just a little bit.
Yeah, originally it was late 2026.
Okay.
But, these things happen with big construction projects.
Sure.
Nothing out of the ordinary. But yeah, first quarter 2027.
Okay, so we've laid some groundwork. It's time to talk money.
The fun part.
What's the economic impact expected here?
So between $540 million and $600 million, that's the capital investment going into this project.
Whoa.
That's a big, big chunk of change. And of course, even before it starts operating, there's that immediate impact from the construction jobs.
Absolutely.
Once it's up and running, it's projected to produce somewhere between 380,000 and 450,000 tons of steel annually, mainly rebar and spooled coils, which are both, essential for infrastructure.
Oh, so that's really going to reduce our reliance on imported rebar then.
That's the hope.
Yeah.
Make it easier for projects to source locally.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's all the new jobs coming in, right?
Oh, yeah, that's a big part of it. They're projecting anywhere from 400 to nearly 700 new jobs.
Wow.
And these are good jobs, skilled trades, electricians, millwrights, the folks who run the automation systems. It's not just, entry-level positions.
Really adding to the, the skilled workforce in the area.
Exactly. And they've actually made a commitment as part of the California Competes tax credit that they received to create almost 450 new jobs within 5 years.
Oh, I see.
So there's, they're really putting their money where their mouth is.
Yeah.
And then overall, Kern County is expecting over $100 million in economic benefits annually from this.
100 million, that's huge.
Yeah, so this is a game changer for the region.
Absolutely. So let's talk about that zero carbon goal, because that's really what makes this so innovative.
So how they're achieving this, how they're planning to, is first off, they're designing it as a really advanced recycling facility.
Okay.
Almost all the scrap metal they'll be using is going to be sourced from within California.
Oh, I see.
And then their whole setup, it's called a micro mill configuration. And that uses hybrid technology and a state-of-the-art carbon capture system.
Wow.
And they're going even further. They're also incorporating high-efficiency filtration systems and NOx emissions mitigation technology.
Wow. So they're really covering all the bases here.
Yeah, they're really trying to make this as clean as possible.
Now, their energy efficiency, how does that work?
So they're using Danieli's Q-on power unit, which is really energy efficient in how it operates. And then they're generating a lot of their own power on site with renewables.
Mm.
63 acres out of the 174 acres of their site is going to be dedicated to solar power.
Wow.
And to support that, they've actually received a $14 million grant from the California Energy Commission for about 50 megawatts of solar power and long-duration energy storage.
So they can store that energy for when they need it.
Exactly. And the overall impact environmentally is expected to be huge. They're saying their rebar will be 85 to 90% cleaner than conventional rebar, potentially eliminating 370,000 tons of greenhouse gases every year.
Amazing. It seems like the state government is really backing this project, too.
Oh, yeah, definitely. The JUGO Biz, the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, they gave Pacific Steel Group a $30 million California Competes tax credit.
Wow.
But in return for that, Pacific Steel Group has to commit to making that over $540 million investment and creating those 450 jobs in 5 years that we talked about.
Okay.
So, it's not just a freebie. And then there's that $14 million grant from the California Energy Commission that we mentioned. That's specifically for the long-duration energy storage to support all that solar power.
Oh, I see.
So they're putting their money where their mouth is, too, And then Governor Newsom attending the groundbreaking ceremony. I mean, it's clear that this project aligns with California's goals, both economically and environmentally.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting to compare this Mojave Micro Mill to, let's say, California Steel Industries in Fontana, which is, an existing steel producer here.
Right.
So how do they stack up against each other?
Well, CSI in Fontana is it's a much bigger operation.
Okay.
They have a total rolling capacity of something like 3 million tons.
Wow.
So much bigger. And they produce a wider range of products.
Yeah.
Like sheet steel, pipe, all sorts of things.
Okay.
And they have about 1,000 employees.
Okay.
But they rely on imported steel slab.
Oh.
So that's a big difference right there.
Yeah.
Whereas the Mojave Micro Mill is really specializing in this sustainable rebar production from recycled scrap.
Right.
Really catering to the green building market and local supply chains.
Right.
So very different approaches.
Absolutely. So we've covered a lot of ground. What are the big takeaways here?
Well, I think the most significant thing is that we're seeing steel manufacturing return to California after 50 years.
Yeah.
And not just any steel manufacturing, but steel manufacturing with this goal of zero process carbon emissions.
Right.
This is potentially a new standard for the entire industry globally.
That's amazing.
And then we can't forget the economic investment. This is a substantial investment coming into Kern County, bringing much needed jobs.
Absolutely.
And all of this is happening with strong support from the state government.
Yeah, this isn't just about a factory being built. It's about, it represents a more resilient, more sustainable infrastructure supply chain here in California.
Yeah.
And it shows how economic growth and environmental responsibility can work together.
Absolutely. Hand in hand.
So for all of you listening out there, I want you to think about this. Could this Mojave Micro Mill, could this be a model for other industries in California? Can we apply the same model of sustainability and local impact to revitalize other manufacturing sectors?
Really interesting question.
It's definitely something to think about.
It is.
All right, that's it for today's deep dive.
Until next time.
We'll see you all next week.